They laughed before he made it through the door, not at him directly. That would have required acknowledging he was there. This was the other kind. Two men at the bar, one says something, the other one smiles into his drink. Neither of them looks up. The kind of laugh that says, "We see you, and what we see is funny, and you're not worth the effort of hiding it." Marcus had heard that laugh before. He put the card on the reception desk anyway. The woman looked at it, looked at him, looked back at it. "One moment," she said. He waited. Coat, jeans, clean shoes. Same thing he wore every day. His father had taught him that changing how you dressed for a room was the first step toward becoming someone else in it. He wasn't going to become someone else. He'd been standing outside this door for 2 years. He was done standing outside. The side office opened. An older man walked out, 70s, unhurried, the kind of person who had stopped needing to prove anything to any room a long time ago. He glanced at the card on the desk. He stopped. He looked at Marcus. "Junior," the man said, not a question. Marcus hadn't told anyone his name. "How did you?" "Your father," the man said. "You have his eyes." He paused. "I have something that belongs to you. He left it with me 2 years ago. Said you'd come when you were ready." He looked at Marcus. "I've been waiting," he said. "If this stays with you, subscribe. We tell stories about what fathers leave behind that money can't explain. Share it tonight." Marcus forgot about the laugh. Marcus had carried it for 2 years without using it. Not because he forgot. Because every time he thought about walking through that door, he'd find a reason not to. Meeting ran late. Flight to catch. Too much going on. All of it true. None of it the real reason. The real reason was the card itself, the weight of it in his wallet, which was not physical weight, it was the other kind. The kind that came from knowing what something meant and not being sure you were ready for what it meant. His father's name was on it. Marcus Webb, founding member, Apex Club, Est 1987. His name was underneath, smaller font. Added after. Marcus Webb Jr. member. His father had handed it to him 2 weeks before he died. Sat across from him at the kitchen table in the house Marcus had grown up in, slid it across like it was nothing, like he was passing the salt. "That's yours now," he'd said. "Dad, don't argue with me about it." "I'm not arguing, you're doing the thing where you make it complicated," his father had said. "It's not complicated. It's a card. You walk in, you show it, you belong there. That's it." Marcus had picked it up. He'd looked at the two names. "When did you put mine on here?" 3 years ago, his father said. "When I knew." Knew what? His father had looked at him the way he looked at him sometimes, like he was seeing something Marcus couldn't see yet. "That you'd need it," he said, "and that you'd wait too long to use it." Marcus was 34 when his father died, 35 today. That was why he was here. Not because of the meeting. There was a meeting, a real one, a portfolio company that needed him to facilitate a conversation between two partners who had stopped speaking. That was real. But it wasn't the reason. The reason was something his father had said in that same conversation at the kitchen table. "When you're 35, go. Don't wait until you feel ready. You'll never feel ready. Just go." He hadn't understood it then. He was starting to understand it now, standing at a reception desk in a club his father had helped build, with a laugh still fading behind him and an old man who knew his name without being told watching him from across the room. He'd looked up the club after his father died. Not the first week. The first week was not a week for research, but after. When the specific hollow quiet of grief had started to lift enough that his brain could do something besides replay the last conversation he'd had, the last time he'd seen him, the last time he hadn't known it was the last time. He'd found the founding documents. Apex Club, Incorporated 1987. 13 founding members. His father's name was fourth on the list. He'd found an old article, 1989, Forbes, a piece about the club that described it as a gathering place for self-made Black and minority entrepreneurs who found that other private clubs in Manhattan weren't particularly interested in their membership. That was the polite version. His father's version had been less polite. "They didn't want us." Marcus Sr. had told him once, years ago when Marcus was maybe 16 and asking about the club for the first time. "So we built our own. And we made it better." Better how? Marcus had asked. His father had thought about it. Better because we knew what it felt like to be told no, he said. So we never told anybody no without a real reason. Marcus had thought about that answer a lot over the years. He was thinking about it now. Standing at the desk with his card in the woman's hand, and two men at the bar who hadn't looked at him since the laugh. Looking away with the specific practiced disinterest of people who had decided something and didn't want to be caught having decided it. His father had built this room, not the walls, the room, the idea of it, the reason it existed, and he'd walked into it and been laughed at before he made it through the door. He didn't know what to do with that. He was still figuring it out when the old man spoke. Junior, he'd said, and Marcus had stopped figuring. His name was Robert Chen. Marcus knew that from the founding documents. Fourth name on the list had been his father. Third had been Robert Chen. 38 years of membership, which meant he'd been here since the beginning, which meant he'd known his father since before Marcus was born. Robert led him to a corner table away from the bar, away from the two men who still hadn't looked up. He didn't say anything about them. Marcus didn't either. They sat. A server appeared. Robert ordered coffee without looking at the menu. Marcus ordered the same because his brain was doing something else, and coffee seemed right. Robert looked at him across the table. Really looked. The way old people sometimes looked at young people when they were searching for someone else in the face. You look like him, Robert said. Around the eyes mostly. When you're not sure about something, what makes you think I'm not sure about something? Marcus said. You've been carrying that card for 2 years, Robert said. Marcus looked at him. How do you know that? Because your father told me you would, Robert said. He said, Robert, my son is going to take that card and put it in his wallet and find every reason not to use it for at least 2 years. When he finally comes in, he'll look like he's not sure he's allowed to be there. He paused. He knew you. Marcus looked at the table. That was the thing about his father. He always knew. Not in a way that felt like pressure, in a way that felt like being seen before you'd figured out what you were showing. He left something for you, Robert said. I told you that already. But before I give it to you, I want to tell you something first. About how I knew your father. Okay, Marcus said. It's not a short story, Robert said. I have time, Marcus said. Robert looked at him. You sure? You seem like a man with somewhere to be. Marcus thought about the meeting. The two partners who had stopped speaking. The $200 million decision sitting on his desk back in Atlanta. It can wait, he said. Robert had met Marcus Sr. in 1984. Not here, long before here, at a conference in Chicago. Small thing, 200 people. The kind of conference that nobody famous spoke at, but where the people in the room were building something real and knew it. They'd ended up next to each other at a dinner nobody wanted to be at. You know those dinners, Robert said, where the food is bad and the speeches are long and everyone is looking at their watch. I know those dinners, Marcus said. Your father leaned over to me halfway through the third speech. Robert said, and he said, if this man says the word synergy, one more time I'm going to walk out and you should come with me. Marcus laughed, real laugh. Did he say it? Marcus asked. 3 more times, Robert said. We left after the second one. They'd gone to a diner 2 blocks away. Sat there until midnight. Talked about everything. Their businesses, their families, what they were trying to build and why, what it felt like to be building it in rooms that hadn't been designed for people who looked like them. He was the most direct person I'd ever met, Robert said. No performance, no positioning. He just said what he thought, and then he listened to what you thought, and he actually changed his mind when you made a good point. You know how rare that is? I know, Marcus said. He did know. It was the thing he'd tried hardest to inherit. We stayed in touch after that, Robert said. Called each other every few months, saw each other at things. Built something like a friendship. The kind that doesn't need a lot of maintenance because both people understand what it is. He stopped, picked up his coffee, put it down. In 1985, he said, I almost lost everything. Marcus waited. Bad deal, Robert said. I made a bet on a real estate project that went wrong in every direction possible. I won't bore you with the details. The point is, I was 3 months from having to close the company. 6 years of work, gone. What happened? Marcus' father happened, Robert said. He said it simply, not dramatically. The way you stated, a fact that was still true 39 years later. He called me one morning. I don't even know how he found out. I hadn't told anyone. And he said, Robert, I heard things are difficult. I said, things are difficult. He said, how much do you need to buy yourself 6 months? Marcus was very still. I told him, Robert said. He said, okay. He wired the money that afternoon. How much? Marcus said. $50,000, Robert said. In 1985. Marcus did the math. He didn't have $50,000 to spare in 1985, Marcus said. No, Robert said. He did not. Then how? I asked him that, Robert said. Later, after I'd pulled through. I asked him where the money came from. What did he say? Robert smiled. Small smile. The kind that came from a memory that was both painful and good at the same time. He said, I had some savings and I had a decision to make. I decided that what you were building was worth more than what I was saving for. Marcus looked at the table. He thought about his father, at whatever age he'd been in 1985. Young, building something, not flush, making the calculation. He never told me that, Marcus said. I know, Robert said. He wouldn't. That's not why he did it. Why did he do it? Robert looked at him. He believed in what I was building, he said. Simple as that. He looked at what I was doing, and he thought it mattered. And he had $50,000, and he gave it to me. He paused. No contract, no equity, no timeline for repayment. Just here, figure it out. Marcus sat with that. With the image of his father, writing a check for $50,000 to a man he'd known for 1 year. Because he believed what that man was building mattered. I tried to pay him back, Robert said. Many times. He refused every time. That sounds right, Marcus said. The last time I tried, maybe 2005, he said something that I've thought about almost every day since. What did he say? Marcus said. Robert looked at him. He said, Robert, you want to pay me back? Find somebody who's 3 months from losing everything and give them the 6 months they need. That's the only payment I want. The table was quiet. The club moved around them, soft noise, soft light, the specific ambient hum of a room full of people doing important things with their time. Marcus didn't hear any of it. He was somewhere in 1985, with a version of his father he'd never known. Young. Scared, probably, though you'd never see it. Writing a check he couldn't really afford because he believed in something. Did you? Marcus said. Find somebody? Many somebodies, Robert said. He looked at Marcus. Your father built this club on that same idea, he said. Not the building, the idea. That if you had something, money, time, access, knowledge, you found the person who needed it and you gave it to them without making them pay it back to you. You made them pay it forward. Marcus looked around the room. At the club his father had helped build. At the two men at the bar who had laughed when he walked in. At Robert Chen, across the table, who had been waiting 2 years for this conversation. He thought about his father, about what he'd actually left behind. Not the card, not the membership, not the money. The idea. He said you'd understand it when you got here, Robert said. He said you'd need to hear it from someone else before it would land, he said. Robert paused. He said you were a lot like him, which meant you were stubborn about the things that mattered and too proud to ask for help when you needed it. Marcus almost smiled. He wasn't wrong, he said. No, Robert said. He wasn't. He reached into his jacket. He put an envelope on the table. He left this with me, he said. 2 years ago, 3 weeks before he died. He said, give this to Marcus when he comes. Don't mail it. Don't call him. Wait until he walks through the door himself. Marcus looked at the envelope. His name on the front, his father's handwriting. He knew I'd come, Marcus said. He knew everything, Robert said. He stood up. I'll give you some time, he said. He walked away. Marcus sat alone with the envelope. He didn't open it right away. He just sat with it for a minute. The way you sat with something, when you knew that opening it was going to change something, and you wanted one more moment before the change. He opened it. One page. His father's handwriting, the same handwriting that had been on birthday cards and notes left on the kitchen counter, and the occasional letter when Marcus was away at school and his father had something to say that felt too important for a phone call. He read it. Marcus, if you're reading this, you finally walked through the door. Took you long enough. I'm not going to say I told you so, but I told you so. Robert just told you about the $50,000. I know because I asked him to tell you before he gave you this letter. I wanted you to hear it from him first. Not because I was proud of it, because I wasn't. It was just the right thing to do, but because I needed you to understand something about that money before you read what I'm about to write. That money wasn't mine. I mean, it was mine technically. I earned it. I saved it. But the reason I had it was because 10 years before that, a man named George Williams gave me 6 months when I was 3 months from losing everything. He didn't ask for it back. He said, pay it forward. So I did, to Robert. And Robert did it to other people. And those people did it to others. The $50,000 I gave Robert in 1985. I have no idea how many people that money has reached by now. Hundreds, probably. Maybe more. That's not charity. That's compounding. Which brings me to you. You're 35 today. I know because I planned this. You always said I was too controlling. You were right. But this time I need you to let me be right about one more thing. You spent the last few years making good decisions, smart decisions, safe decisions. And Marcus, safe decisions are not why I worked as hard as I did. I worked that hard so you could afford to make the scary ones. There's a deal on your desk right now. I don't know what it is specifically. I'm writing this 3 weeks before I die, and I don't have that kind of visibility. But I know you, and I know that when you're 35, there will be something big in front of you that you're talking yourself out of. There's always something big that you're talking yourself out of. Stop talking yourself out of it. Not because it will definitely work. It might not. But because the question you need to be asking isn't whether it works. The question is, who does this buy time for? And what will they do with it? If the answer is someone worth believing in, do it. That's the whole thing, Marcus. That's everything I learned in 40 years of building things. You don't build for return. You build for the people who are going to do something with what you build. You give them time. You believe in them before they believe in themselves. And then you get out of the way. The card in your wallet, look at the back of it. I had that engraved in 1989, 2 years after we opened. I never told you it was there. You'll understand why when you see it. I love you. I'm proud of you. Not because of what you've built, because of who you are when you think nobody's watching. Go do the scary thing. Dad Marcus put the letter down. He sat there. The club moved around him. Soft noise, soft light. Somebody laughed at something across the room. Real laugh, nothing like the one from the bar. He reached into his wallet. He took out the card. He turned it over. 4 words engraved on the back in small, clean letters. For the ones who come after. He stared at it. He thought about his father engraving those words in 1989. Marcus had been born in 1990. His father had engraved those words 1 year before Marcus existed. For the ones who come after. He'd been carrying those words in his wallet for 2 years. He'd never turned the card over. He sat with that for a while, with the specific, quiet weight of realizing that someone had been thinking about you before you were even there to be thought about. That the room he was sitting in, the room he'd been laughed at walking into, had been built for him. Not for him specifically, for whoever came after, which turned out to be him. He thought about the deal on his desk in Atlanta. $200 million. 2 founders of a company he believed in, genuinely believed in. The kind of belief that came from watching someone work and seeing what they were capable of before they saw it themselves. He'd been going back and forth for 3 weeks. The numbers worked. He'd run them 12 times. The numbers worked. But something had been stopping him. He understood now what it was. He'd been asking the wrong question. He'd been asking, is this a good investment? The right question was, who does this buy time for? The answer was 2 founders who were 3 months from having to shut down. The answer was 40 employees who believed in what they were building. The answer was a product that, if it had time to develop, could change how a specific underserved community accessed financial services. The answer was people worth believing in before they believed in themselves. He put the card back in his wallet. He picked up the letter. He read the last line again. Go do the scary thing. He folded it carefully. He put it in his jacket pocket, against his chest. He sat for one more minute. Then he took out his phone. He called his partner back in Atlanta. She picked up on the second ring. We doing this? She said. She knew him well enough to know that a call in the middle of the day from a number he was supposed to be ignoring meant a decision had been made. We're doing this, he said. What changed? She said. He looked around the room. At the club his father had helped build. At Robert Chen across the room talking to someone, not looking over, giving him the space he'd needed. At the card in his wallet with 4 words on the back. I asked the right question, he said. She was quiet for a second. Okay, she said. I'll get the paperwork moving. One more thing, he said. Yeah? The founders, he said. When we close, I don't want a repayment schedule in the standard terms. I want a clause. When they get to the other side of this, they find someone who's 3 months from losing everything, and they give them 6 months. Silence. That's not a standard clause, she said. No, he said. It's not. They'll think it's weird, she said. Probably, he said. Put it in anyway. She laughed. You sound like your father, she said. He looked at the card in his hand. Working on it, he said. He almost walked out without saying anything. That was the plan. Read the letter. Make the call. Find Robert. Say thank you. Leave. Clean. Simple. No confrontation. He folded the letter, put it in his pocket, stood up. And then one of the 2 men at the bar said something to the other one, and they both laughed again, and Marcus heard it, not because it was loud, because he was tuned to that frequency now, had been tuned to it since he was about 12 years old, and he stopped. He didn't turn around immediately. He stood there for a second. He thought about his father, about a man who had built this room so that the people who came after him wouldn't have to justify their presence in it. He thought about the 2 men, about the laugh, about the fact that they were sitting in a room his father had helped build, at a bar his father's dues had helped fund, probably benefiting in ways they'd never trace back to the people who'd made this place possible. And they were laughing, not at him specifically anymore, just laughing. Moving on, the incident already filed away under, that guy didn't belong, without a second thought. That was the thing that got him. Not the malice, the forgetting. He turned around. He walked to the bar. He sat down 2 seats from them, not next to them. 2 seats, enough space that it wasn't confrontational. Close enough that there was no pretending he wasn't there. The bartender came over. What can I get you? Water, Marcus said, and whatever they're having. The bartender looked at him, looked at the 2 men, nodded the 2 men, looked at Marcus. He looked back. Nobody said anything for a moment. The taller one, late 50s, silver at the temples, the suit of someone who had been wearing suits his entire adult life and had stopped thinking about them, cleared his throat. Can we help you? He said. Not unfriendly. Not friendly either. The voice of someone who was accustomed to being the one who decided whether an interaction was going to happen. No, Marcus said. I'm good. He picked up the water the bartender had set down. He drank it. The 2 men exchanged a look. You're Webb's son, the other one said. Marcus looked at him. This one was shorter, rounder. The kind of face that had probably been handsome 20 years ago and had settled into something comfortable. Did Robert tell you? Marcus said. Robert didn't have to, the man said. I knew Marcus Webb for 20 years. You look exactly like him. Marcus said nothing. I'm David Park, the man said. This is Elliot Green. We were founding members with your father. Marcus looked at them, at the 2 men who had laughed when he walked in, who had known his father for 20 years. Huh, Marcus said. That was all he said. Just huh. David Park had the grace to look uncomfortable. We didn't know it was you, he said, when you walked in. I know, Marcus said. We thought I know what you thought, Marcus said. Not angry, just clear. The way his father got clear when something needed to be said and sentiment wasn't going to help it get said. David Park looked at his drink. Elliot Green looked at the bar. Your father would have had something to say about that, Elliot said quietly. Yes, Marcus said. He would have. What would he have said? David asked. Marcus thought about it. He thought about his father at a dinner in Chicago in 1984, leaning over to a stranger and saying, "If this man says synergy one more time, I'm walking out." He thought about his father sliding a card across a kitchen table like he was passing the salt. He thought about four words engraved on the back of a card 1 year before his son was born. He would have said, Marcus said, that the room is only as good as what people bring into it, and that a laugh at the door is a tax on the idea the room was built on. David Park was quiet. Elliot Green was quiet. The bar was quiet. He used to say things like that, David said. Your father. I know, Marcus said. I grew up with it. We miss him, Elliot said. And that, the way he said it without performance, just a simple fact stated simply, took some of the air out of Marcus's chest. Because it was true. He could hear that it was true. These weren't bad men. They were men who had known his father, who had built something with his father, who had in one unconsidered moment looked at a man walking through a door and processed him through a filter they'd probably never examined and laughed at what the filter produced, and who had no idea that the man they were laughing at was the son of the man who had helped teach them what the room was for. I miss him too, Marcus said. He put down his glass. He stood up. The laugh, he said, when I walked in. They both looked at him. I'm not going to make it a big thing, Marcus said, but I'm also not going to pretend it didn't happen. Because it did. And if my father were here, he'd tell you the same thing. He looked at them. Not hard. Not soft. Just direct. The room was built so that people who looked like me could walk in without having to explain themselves, he said. That's the whole point of it. You both know that. You were there when it was built. Neither of them said anything. So, Marcus said, that's it. That's what I came over to say. He picked up the card he'd set on the bar. He held it for a moment. He thought about putting it back in his wallet. Instead, he put it on the bar between them. Face up. His father's name. His name underneath. He let them look at it. Then he turned it over. For the ones who come after. He let them read it. He picked it up. He put it back in his wallet. He walked away. He found Robert by the window, standing alone, looking at the street below, coffee in hand. The posture of someone who had given someone else space and was now waiting to see what came back. Marcus sat down in the chair beside him. Robert didn't turn around immediately. He gave it a moment. Then he sat down across from Marcus and looked at him the way he'd looked at him at the table earlier, searching for something in the face. You read it, Robert said. Yes, Marcus said. And I made a phone call, Marcus said. Closed a deal I'd been talking myself out of for 3 weeks. Robert nodded slowly. Good, he said. What changed? I was asking the wrong question, Marcus said. I was asking whether it was a good investment. The right question was who it bought time for. Robert looked at him for a long moment. He taught you that, Robert said. He taught me today, Marcus said. 35 years late. No, Robert said, right on time. They sat with that for a second. Outside the window, Manhattan was doing what Manhattan did. Moving, always moving, the specific restless energy of a city that never fully committed to any one thing for very long. I went to the bar, Marcus said. Robert looked at him. I saw, he said. You were watching? I was keeping an eye on things, Robert said. Old habit. David Park and Elliot Green, Marcus said. Founding members. Yes, Robert said. They knew my father for 20 years. Yes, Robert said. Marcus looked at the window. Did they know who I was when I walked in? He said. No, Robert said. They didn't. Does that make it better or worse? Robert thought about it honestly. Neither, he said. It makes it what it is. Two men who weren't paying attention, who let something automatic take over before their brain caught up. He paused. It happens, even in rooms that were built to stop it from happening. Especially in those rooms, Marcus said. Robert looked at him. Yes, he said quietly. You're right, especially in those rooms. Because the room being safe doesn't make the people in it automatically different. It just means they're supposed to be trying. Supposed to, Marcus said. Supposed to, Robert said. He drank his coffee. Marcus looked at the street. My father, Marcus said. What was he like here, in this room, when he came in? Robert almost smiled. The same as everywhere, he said. That was the thing about your father. He didn't have a public version and a private version. What you saw was what there was. I know, Marcus said. He'd walk in, Robert said, and he'd work the room, but not like networking. Like he was genuinely happy to see each person. Because he was. He remembered everything. What your kids were doing, what deal you were working on, what you'd mentioned 6 months ago that was bothering you. He paused. He made people feel like they were the only person in the room. Marcus looked at his hands. He did that at home too, he said. I know, Robert said. He talked about you the same way. Marcus looked up. What did he say? That you were too careful, Robert said. His words. He said, Marcus is the smartest person I know, and he wastes half of it being careful when he should be being bold. Marcus laughed, short laugh, the kind that came from recognition. He said that to me directly, Marcus said, multiple times. Did it land? Not until today, Marcus said. Robert nodded. That's how it works sometimes, he said. You hear something 20 times and it's noise. Then the right moment comes and you hear it once and it's everything. Marcus thought about the letter, about go do the scary thing, about hearing those words in his father's handwriting in a room his father had helped build on the morning of his 35th birthday, after being laughed at by men who had known his father for 20 years. That was the right moment. Can I ask you something? Marcus said. Ask, Robert said. The $50,000, Marcus said. You said you tried to pay him back many times. Yes, Robert said. What did he do when you tried? Robert put down his coffee. First time, 1988. I wrote him a check and he tore it up in front of me, Robert said. Didn't say anything. Just tore it up and changed the subject. Marcus smiled. Second time, 1992. I tried to wire it to his account. He wired it back the same day with a note that said, wrong address. Marcus laughed. Third time, Robert said, I tried to invest it in his company. Give him the $50,000 as equity. He called me and he said, Robert, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but I need you to stop. I didn't give you that money to get it back. I gave it to you because you needed it and I had it. And that's the whole transaction. It's done. Let it be done. He looked at Marcus. That was 1995, he said. I let it be done. Until 2005, Marcus said, when he told you to pay it forward. Until 2005, Robert said. Yes. And you did, Marcus said. Many times, Robert said, in different amounts, different people, different situations. He looked at the window. Some of them paid it forward themselves. Some didn't. That's the nature of it. You can't control what people do with the time you give them. But you give it anyway, Marcus said. You give it anyway, Robert said. Because the ones who do something with it, they make up for the ones who don't. And you can't know in advance which is which. Marcus thought about the deal. About 2 founders who were 3 months from shutting down. About 40 employees. About a product that could change how people accessed financial services. About not knowing in advance which kind they were. Choosing to believe they were the kind who did something with it. The clause, Marcus said. The one I put in the deal. Pay it forward when you get to the other side. Robert looked at him. Yes, Marcus said. I put it in. Robert was quiet for a moment. Your father, he said finally. He would have, he stopped. What? Marcus said. He would have been insufferable about it, Robert said. He would have said, I told you so. He would have said it at least 4 times. Marcus laughed. Real laugh. The kind that came from somewhere below the place where composed things lived. Yeah, he said. He would have. Robert picked up his coffee. He looked at it. He put it down. Marcus, he said. Yeah, Marcus said. Come back, Robert said. Not for a meeting. Just come back. This room needs people who remember what it was built for. Marcus looked around. At the club. At the bar where David Park and Elliot Green were sitting quietly now, not laughing, just sitting. At the window with Manhattan below. At the room his father had helped build for people who came after. I'll come back, he said. He meant it. The 2 founders were already in the conference room when Marcus arrived. 3rd floor of a building 6 blocks from the club. Small room, round table, the kind of setup that said, nobody's at the head of this. He'd chosen that on purpose. Their names were Deja Williams and Chris Park, 31 and 33. They'd started the company 4 years ago out of Deja's apartment in Brooklyn with $40,000 between them and an idea about making financial services accessible to communities that traditional banks had spent decades finding creative ways to avoid. The idea was good. The execution had been harder than either of them expected, which was true of every good idea. At some point in year 3, something had broken between them. Not the company. The company was still running, still growing, still doing the thing it was supposed to do. Something between them. The specific, invisible fracture. That happened when two people had been under pressure for long enough that they stopped being able to hear each other. They'd been in the same room for 3 minutes and hadn't spoken. Marcus sat down. He looked at Deja. He looked at Chris. Okay, he said. Who wants to go first? Silence. Nobody, Chris said. That's fine, Marcus said. I'll start then. He put his phone on the table, face down. I almost didn't do this deal, he said. They both looked at him. I had the numbers. The numbers worked. I ran them 12 times. He paused. But I kept finding reasons to wait, to think about it more, to make sure. What changed? Deja said. I stopped asking if it was a good investment, Marcus said, and I started asking who it bought time for. Chris looked at him. And? He said. And the answer was you two, Marcus said, and your 40 employees. And the people using your product who can't get a fair deal anywhere else. He looked at them. That was enough. Deja looked at the table. Chris looked at the window. The specific, slightly stunned quiet of two people who had been grinding for 4 years and were not accustomed to someone saying, I believe in what you're building without immediately following it with conditions. There's a clause in the deal, Marcus said. Non-standard. My lawyer flagged it. I kept it in. What clause? Chris said. When you get to the other side of this, when the company is stable, when you've made it, you find somebody who's 3 months from losing everything and you give them 6 months. Silence. That's it, Marcus said. No specifics, no reporting requirement. Just you do it whenever it feels right, however it makes sense. Deja looked at him. Why? She said. Marcus thought about his father at a diner in Chicago in 1984. About $50,000 wired the same afternoon without a contract. About a note that said wrong address. About 4 words on the back of a card. Because someone did it for me today, he said. And someone did it for the person who did it for me. And it goes back further than I can trace. He looked at them. I'm not asking you to pay me back. I'm asking you to keep it moving. Chris looked at Deja. Deja looked at Chris. Something happened between them in that look. The specific, wordless communication of two people who had built something together and still knew how to read each other even when they'd forgotten how to talk. Okay, Deja said. Okay, Chris said. Marcus nodded. He picked up his phone. Now, he said, tell me what's actually broken between you two. Because I'm not putting $200 million into a company where the founders aren't talking to each other. Chris almost smiled. Deja did smile. It's not that bad, Chris said. It's a little bad, Deja said. Tell me, Marcus said. They talked for 2 hours. Not about the business, about the thing underneath the business. The decisions that had been made without enough conversation. The assumptions that had hardened into resentments. The specific accumulated weight of 4 years of pressure that had never been properly put down. Marcus mostly listened. When he talked, it was to ask questions. Not advice questions, understanding questions. The kind that weren't trying to lead anywhere, just trying to see what was actually there. His father had taught him that too. Most people listen to respond, Marcus Sr. had said once. The good ones listen to understand. The great ones listen to find the question they didn't know they needed to ask. Marcus had been practicing that for 15 years. He wasn't great at it yet. He was getting better. Around the 90-minute mark, something shifted in the room. Deja said something honest. Chris heard it. He didn't respond the way he'd been responding for the last 6 months. Defensively, already building the counter-argument before she'd finished the sentence. He just heard it. I didn't know you felt that way, he said. I didn't know how to say it, she said. You just said it, he said. I know, she said. It only took 2 hours and an investor in the room. Chris laughed. Deja laughed. Marcus looked at the table and let them have it. He thought about his father, about two people at a bad dinner in Chicago in 1984 who had ended up at a diner and talked until midnight, about the specific, unpredictable way that real conversations happened. Not when you planned them, when the circumstances finally made them unavoidable. He thought about his own conversations with his father, the ones he'd had, the ones he hadn't, the ones he'd been putting off because he thought there was more time. There was always supposed to be more time. Marcus, Deja said. He looked up. Thank you, she said, for the clause, for all of it. Don't thank me, he said. Thank the people who built the room. She looked at him. What room? He thought about how to explain it. He thought about the Apex Club 6 blocks away, about his father's name on a founding document from 1987, about a card with 4 words on the back, about Robert Chen standing at a window with coffee waiting for him to come back. There's always a room someone built before you got there, he said. You just have to figure out what it was built for, and then you build the next one. Deja looked at Chris. Chris looked at Deja. That's going on the wall, Chris said. Don't put it on the wall, Marcus said. Live it. He left at 4:30, walked back toward the club. Not to go back in. He had a flight. Just to walk past it. He stopped outside, looked at the door, thought about this morning. The laugh. The card on the desk. The old man who had known his name. The letter in his pocket. He put his hand on his jacket. Felt the letter there. Against his chest. He thought about his father engraving 4 words on the back of a card in 1989 for a son who wouldn't be born for another year. For the ones who come after. He'd been one of the ones who came after. Someday someone would come after him. He needed to start thinking about what he was building for them. Not yet. Today he'd done enough. Today he'd walked through the door. His flight was at 7. He got to JFK at 5:45 with time to spare. Unusual for him. He was typically the person sprinting through security with 11 minutes to boarding. Tonight he'd left early on purpose. He wanted the time. He found a seat at the gate, put his bag down, took out the letter. Read it again. Not because he'd forgotten what it said, because some things were worth reading twice in the same day. His father had written it knowing Marcus would read it once in the club, and once somewhere else, somewhere quieter, somewhere the initial weight of it had settled enough that the second reading could land differently. His father had known that. Of course he had. Took you long enough, the letter started. Marcus smiled at that. The gate was busy around him. People on phones. A kid running between seats while his mother tracked him with the specific, exhausted patience of someone who had been tracking him all day. A man in a suit, staring at his laptop, with the expression of someone who had stopped seeing what was on the screen. Marcus looked at the letter. He thought about his father writing it. Sitting somewhere, probably the study. That was where he wrote things that mattered. 3 weeks before he died. Knowing he was dying. Writing to a son who didn't know yet. Writing like he had all the time in the world. Because that was who Marcus Sr. was. He didn't panic. He didn't perform. He sat down and he did the thing that needed doing, and he did it as well as he could, and then he moved on to the next thing. Marcus had spent his whole life trying to learn that. He was still learning it. You've spent the last few years making good decisions. Smart decisions. Safe decisions. And Marcus, safe decisions are not why I worked as hard as I did. He thought about safe decisions. He'd made a lot of them. Not out of fear exactly, out of caution. The specific, calculated caution of someone who had watched his father take risks and had seen some of them not work out and had decided somewhere along the way that he would be more careful. More careful. As if careful was the goal. As if his father had worked 40 years so his son could be careful. I worked that hard so you could afford to make the scary ones. He folded the letter. He put it back in his pocket. He thought about the deal. About Deja and Chris in a conference room, 6 blocks from the club, working through 4 years of compressed pressure in 2 hours because someone had finally asked the right questions, and sat there long enough to hear the answers. He thought about the clause, about whether they'd use it. He didn't know. You can't control what people do with the time you give them, but you give it anyway. Robert had said that. His father had lived it. Marcus was starting to understand it, not as a concept, as a practice. The daily, unglamorous practice of giving something without knowing what would come back. He took out his phone. He had 12 unread messages. He looked at them. His partner had sent 3. Updates on the paperwork. The lawyers had questions. The timeline was moving faster than expected. His assistant had sent 2. His schedule for tomorrow. A reminder about a call at 8 a.m. David Park had sent 1. Marcus looked at that one for a moment, then opened it. Marcus, David Park from the club. Got your contact from Robert. I want to apologize properly. Not over text, in person if you're willing. Your father was a good man, and we didn't give you the welcome he would have expected. Can we have lunch when you're next in New York? Marcus read it twice. He thought about David at the bar, about we miss him, about the way he'd said it without performance, just a simple fact. He typed back, next month. I'll have my assistant reach out. He put his phone away. He looked at the gate. The kid who'd been running between seats had worn himself out and was now asleep across 2 chairs with his head in his mother's lap. She was on her phone, one hand on his back, the specific multitasking of a parent who had learned that being present and being distracted were not mutually exclusive when you'd been doing it long enough. Marcus watched them. He thought about his father, about the specific way Marcus Sr. had been present, not multitasking, present. When he was with you, he was with you. Phone away, eyes on you. The full weight of his attention aimed at whatever you were saying, even when what you were saying wasn't particularly important, especially when it wasn't particularly important. He made people feel like they were the only person in the room, Robert had said. Marcus had felt that his whole life and had never had language for it until today. That was the inheritance, not the card, not the club membership, not the money or the connections or the network of people who had known Marcus Sr. for 20 years and would take a call from his son. The inheritance was the attention, the practice of making whoever was in front of you feel like the only person in the room. Marcus had some of it, not as much as his father. He was working on it. They called his boarding group at 6:50. He stood up. He picked up his bag. He thought about the morning. 12 hours ago, he'd been standing outside a door he'd been avoiding for 2 years. He'd walked in. He'd been laughed at. He'd sat with a man who had known his father for 38 years and heard a story about $50,000 and a diner in Chicago and what it meant to believe in something. He'd read a letter. He'd turned over a card. He'd made a phone call. He'd sat in a room with 2 people who had forgotten how to talk to each other and helped them remember. He'd walked back past a door. He'd come to an airport. He'd read the letter again. Not a bad day. His father would have said, not bad for someone who almost didn't walk through the door. Marcus would have said, I wasn't going to not walk through the door. His father would have said, you were absolutely going to not walk through the door. And he would have been right. He always was. He boarded, found his seat, window. He put his bag in the overhead and sat down and looked out at the tarmac. JFK at dusk, the specific gray-orange light of a New York evening. The planes lined up with the patience of things that moved on schedules. The ground crew doing the work that made everything else possible, without anyone in the plane thinking much about them. He thought about invisible work, about the work that held things up that nobody saw. His father had done a lot of invisible work. The $50,000 to Robert, the founding of the club, the inscription on the card, the letter written 3 weeks before he died, to be given to a son on his 35th birthday by a man who had been waiting 2 years to hand it over. All of it invisible until today. All of it holding something up. He reached into his pocket. He took out the card. He held it. Both sides. His father's name. His name for the ones who come after. He thought about who came after him. Not abstractly. Specifically. He had a cousin, 22 years old, first in the family to go to college, studying finance at Howard, sending Marcus emails every few months asking questions that Marcus answered when he remembered to and didn't when he was too busy. He hadn't answered the last two. He made a note on his phone, called Deshaun. He put the card back in his wallet. He put his phone away. The plane started moving. He looked out the window. He thought, Deshaun is 3 months from needing 6 months. He thought, I should have called him already. He thought, I'll call him tomorrow. He meant it. He called him the next morning. Not tomorrow, eventually. The next morning. 7:45, before the 8 o'clock call, before his assistant had fully started her day, before he'd talked himself into waiting for a better time. There was never a better time. His father had taught him that. Deshaun picked up on the third ring. Marcus? Surprised. Not bad surprised. The surprise of someone who had been waiting for something and stopped expecting it, and then it happened anyway. Hey, Marcus said. Sorry I haven't called back. I owe you 2 emails. 3, Deshaun said. 3, Marcus said. I know. I'm calling. You're calling, Deshaun said, quiet for a second. Then, is everything okay? Everything's fine, Marcus said. I had a day yesterday that made me think about some things. And one of the things I thought about was that you've been sending me questions, and I've been answering them when I remembered to, and that's not good enough. Deshaun didn't say anything. You still there? Marcus said. Yeah, Deshaun said. I'm here. Yeah, okay. Tell me what's going on, Marcus said. Not the email version, the real version. The real version took 40 minutes. Deshaun was a senior at Howard, finance major. Smart. Marcus had known that since Deshaun was 16 and taking apart arguments at family dinners with the focused precision of someone who should have been annoying but was somehow just right. He wanted to work in venture capital. He'd been applying for summer analyst positions, the entry-level programs at firms that were the first step toward the career he was trying to build. He'd applied to 14 programs. He'd heard back from 2, both rejections. The rejection emails all say the same thing, Deshaun said. We received an overwhelming number of applications. The caliber of candidates was exceptional. We encourage you to apply again in the future. Form letters, Marcus said. Form letters, Deshaun said. I don't even know what I'm doing wrong. What does your application look like? Marcus said. Deshaun walked him through it. GPA, 3.8. Internship at a mid-size asset management firm the summer before. 1 research paper on emerging market dynamics that he'd written for a professor and that the professor had called the best undergraduate work he'd seen in 5 years. That paper, Marcus said. Is it in the application? It's listed, Deshaun said, under extracurricular activities. Marcus closed his eyes briefly. Deshaun, he said. That paper should be the first thing they read. Not listed under extracurriculars, a separate document, included with a cover letter that opens with it. Silence. Nobody told me that, Deshaun said. I know, Marcus said. That's why I'm telling you now. He thought about his father. About a version of his father he hadn't known until yesterday. Young, building something, not having the vocabulary yet to package what he had in the language the room was asking for. About Patricia. About phone calls before decisions. About what it meant to have someone say, I've read your application 3 times. Tell me what the form didn't capture. Deshaun had the thing. He just didn't know how to make it legible. Send me everything, Marcus said. Resume, cover letter, the paper. Send it today. You're going to read it? Deshaun said. Yes, Marcus said. Deshaun, Marcus said. Yeah, Deshaun said. Send it today. The application arrived at 9:15. Marcus read it between his 10 o'clock and his 11. Deshaun was right. It didn't capture what he had. Not because he wasn't good. Because he was translating himself into a format that wasn't built for what he was bringing. The resume was technically correct and completely wrong. The cover letter was professional and forgettable. The paper, buried in a list of extracurriculars, was the best thing in the packet and nobody would see it. Marcus had seen this before. He'd been seeing it for 10 years. Candidates who had everything and didn't know how to show it. Not because they weren't smart enough to figure it out, because they were operating in a system that rewarded a specific kind of legibility and nobody had taught them how to be legible in that specific way. It wasn't a failure of ability. It was a failure of translation. He picked up the phone. He called his chief of staff. "I'm going to send you a resume," he said. "Can you get the person on the phone with me this afternoon?" "Who is it?" she said. "My cousin," he said. "He's applying for summer analyst programs. He's getting form letter rejections and he shouldn't be." She was quiet for a second. "You want to mentor him?" she said. Marcus thought about that word. Mentor. He thought about what his father had actually done with people. It wasn't mentorship in the formal sense. The scheduled check-ins, the structured advice, the career roadmap conversations. It was something less organized and more real. It was paying attention. It was telling the truth. It was being available when someone needed to be heard and saying the thing that needed saying, even when it was easier not to. It was making whoever was in front of you feel like the only person in the room. "Something like that," he said. He sent the email. He went to his 11 o'clock. Deshaun called him back at 3. "I got 2 callbacks," he said, from the revised version. "Already." Marcus looked at his phone. "You sent the revised version already," he said. "This morning," Deshaun said. "After we talked, I rewrote the whole thing. Sent it to the 4 firms I hadn't heard from yet. 2 callbacks from 4 applications," Marcus said. "In 6 hours," Deshaun said. Marcus sat back. He thought about $50,000 wired the same afternoon. About the 6 months you gave someone so they could figure it out. He hadn't given Deshaun money. He'd given him 40 minutes on the phone and 2 hours of reading. He'd given him the question the form wasn't asking. He'd given him time. "Deshaun," he said. "Yeah," Deshaun said. "When you get to the other side of this," Marcus said. "When you've landed somewhere and you've built something, I need you to find someone who's 3 months from giving up and give them 6 months." Silence. "What does that mean?" Deshaun said. "It means what it sounds like," Marcus said. "You'll know when the moment comes." "Is this a web thing?" Deshaun said. Marcus almost laughed. "Yeah," he said, "it's a web thing. Your dad used to say stuff like that," Deshaun said. Marcus looked out the window, at Atlanta, his city. The city his father had built things in. "I know," he said. "I'm working on it." Deshaun was quiet for a second. "Marcus," he said. "Yeah," he said. "Thank you," Deshaun said, "for calling, like actually calling." Marcus thought about 3 unanswered emails, about a note on his phone made at 37,000 feet, about a card with 4 words on the back. "I should have called sooner," he said. "Yeah," Deshaun said, "but you called." Marcus looked at the card on his desk. He'd taken it out of his wallet when he got home last night, set it on the desk, where he could see it, both sides, for the ones who come after. Deshaun was one of the ones who came after. There were more. There were always more. That was the point. That was the whole point. 3 weeks later, he went back. Robert was already at the corner table. Coffee'd never left. Marcus sat down. "Deshaun got the internship," Marcus said. "Starts in June." Robert looked at him. 40 minutes on the phone," Marcus said. 40 minutes, Robert said. He almost smiled. "Your father would have been insufferable about it." 4 times at least, Marcus said. They sat with that. Marcus took out the card, set it on the table between them. Robert looked at it. Both sides. "He showed me this when he had it engraved," Robert said. 1989. He said, "Every room we build for the ones who come after, not for us. We're already here." Marcus looked at his father's name, his name underneath. "He was 34 when he said that," Robert said. Marcus looked up. Robert looked back. Neither of them said anything. Then Robert put down his coffee. "There's someone I want you to meet," he said. "Young woman. Building something in fintech. 3 months from losing everything." Marcus picked up the card, put it back in his wallet. "Send me her information," he said. He stood up. He walked out. "Subscribe if you're new. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And tell me in the comments, whose room are you walking into today that someone built for you?" I read everyone. See you in the next story.